Testing audio, 1, 2, 3, testing audio. All right, welcome. Thanks for joining me. It is Tuesday afternoon, post-close. Tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday mornings, 7 a.m. until noon. I haven't done this in a little bit, but I'm opening up the vidiROOM simulcast on YouTube, on the YouTube channel. You don't have to come in through the viditrade portal, signing up, entering. There's a couple drawbacks to that, but a lot easier for you to just drop in. If you'd like, please go ahead and say hi in the chat. Let me know you're here. As usual, if you, I hate asking this, if you don't mind like the channel, that is a benefit, or derives benefits eventually, I am told, from YouTube. So if you could do that, I appreciate that. Also follow. If you're just dropping in, thanks, but go ahead and follow this channel. You're not blanketed with mail or anything like that. But if you're not otherwise aware, and I open up the room, the simulcast, or just the channel for anything, post a video to it. Some lessons. We're going to be starting a series of tutorials. Follow, and it'll be pushed to you, and you can watch it at your leisure or not. Under duress is fine. So again, as I said, tomorrow and Thursday, we'll get into doing this a little more often, but it'll just be those 2 mornings. We do our Saturday review. We do our morning strategy planner at 7 a.m. every day. It can last up to a half hour. The first 7 to 10 minutes is devoted to the ES. So that gives us our strategy. We look at what the market's doing, anything that we anticipate from the overnight action, further informing any bigger patterns that we're looking at. I'll go ahead and update you in a moment here, in fact. But that's what the strategy planner is for. Then a couple hours later, we meet at 9:15, 15 minutes before the open, for another real quick presentation called Opening Tactics. So we go from strategy to now seeing at that point price action for a couple hours leading into the open. I can often identify some immediately actionable setups. So here's, for instance, yesterday. Yesterday we knew going into the open that if we were to start probing 33, that based on the overnight action leading into that setup, that we had a signal. You'll learn more about this tomorrow, but our objective was to trend up through the morning. And in fact, we trended up through the morning. That was an immediately actionable setup. That immediately actionable defined as upon first contact, anticipating multiple points of follow through, whether it's maintained or not. If you're scalping, which is how some subscribers use my signals, that's certainly of interest to you. If you're positioning, there's some other setups that you'll be learning. We'll go over them in just a moment, very briefly, but more so tomorrow, just briefly enough so that you can hit the ground running tomorrow and understand the legend, the annotations here. But let's go ahead and get into it so we can get through it. But again, 7 a.m. tomorrow morning is the strategy planner session. You won't be here for the afternoon. I cut it off starting at noon. Sometime during the noon hour, we stop the feed. And if we're in the middle of something, or you see something else developing and you've seen enough and you know you want to stick around, we had a great afternoon. We had a target, I'll show you why in a moment as well, 53.43 that was created in the morning. Based on the morning holding this test, we knew we were going to be attracted to 53.43. whatever the path there, we had a symmetrical triangle telling us false break, reversal more substantially in the opposite direction, got to its target or to within a tick, resumed the rally. Lots of patience, but still, if tomorrow morning or tomorrow at noon, in the noon hour when I cut the feed, if you want to continue on, I'll have a special promotional offer. It'll really be too good to pass up, especially Wednesdays. And Thursdays, if you can act by Memorial Day. Also a reasonable deal, not as good as Wednesdays. But only for the mornings, that's all. You won't see the closing wrap. Closing wrap is another, and by the way, all these are these presentations. 7 a.m. the strategy planner, 9:15 the opening tactics, and at 3:45 the market wrap. I'll drop its link here. Afterward, you're free to watch it just to see what it's like. That's just to give you a heads up, hit the ground running for tomorrow. What's our current analysis after today's session? And then if you're able to join us at 7 live, or you'll see that recording dropped here in the chat as well. I suggest watching it so that you know what we're looking for and why, what the premise is, what can disprove the premise, and then at 9:15 for the opening tactics, so you can see what we're what is behind the setups. But let's go ahead and first of all, I was going to show you the bigger picture. So right now, this is what we're coming into tomorrow's session with, is an ascending triangle that has formed. Previously, we knew that the pullback was going to be temporary to whatever degree. Usually it's going to be shallower and briefer as opposed to deeper and more protracted, but we had a breakout from a multi-session range, a breakout on Tuesday, confirmed with a second consecutive higher close on Wednesday, and that told us at some point we're going to have a eventual third higher close, higher than Tuesday's, or higher than Wednesday's highs. And even though we probed it, every time we reacted down, we knew we'd recover because that was a requirement, and that's now done. But in doing so, an ascending triangle has formed. And this is my rule for an ascending triangle, at least guideline. Here's the widest swing. Here's the pullback that this morning's open held. It's a little off, but basically a 61.8 retracement. So this doesn't have to resolve up immediately. It can dip first and still maintain its ascending triangle properties and likely upside resolution. Watch the market wrap recording I just dropped in the chat, and you'll know more about that, because that's going to be guiding us tomorrow morning. That, along with the bias signals. Just a point about my methodology. It's really based on traps. What you know as traps. Bear traps, bull traps. What I call tests. And it's kind of like this. If you have a level, let's say this level is 53.20, and you have a signal that says buy above 53.20. All right, price breaks above 53.20, and then it dips back under it. What do? Was that a breakout? Did that even qualify? It resolves up. How do you make sense of this? I make sense of it because if you look down at the bottom of this screen, you see these timing windows, I call them. These timing windows. Certain price action within those timing windows, like if this were the morning bias, 10:15 to 11:30, and by 11:30 a probe above 53.20 had been maintained, that's telling me I don't care what happens. Well, I care what happens in the interim, but I'm anticipating its reward. Or let's say this entire window is that bias window, 10:15 to 11:30, and we come out of it fluctuating around 53.20, but ultimately recovering it. Same thing. that tells me ultimately that signal triggered. That's a very rudimentary approach to the methodology, but that's basically it. It's a combination of price. I'll share some insights tomorrow how I determine relevant prices, but also the timing window. For instance, this afternoon, I was able to point out this descending triangle that was forming. And it was forming in real time, and as I shared at the time, descending triangle, descending bearish, down. Actually, if we'd seen this descending triangle in this setup in the morning, I'd be giving sellers a lot of benefit of the doubt that they were going to be reversing down. But this late in the day, when we see a descending triangle, it's a different pattern because it's different sponsorship forming it. So we anticipate the false break, and we anticipate the false break to recover. And by the way, when that false break is recovered, we expect there to be a substantial reward. And it didn't really matter. We happened to have a higher attraction outstanding. I'll call audibles intraday. So, for instance, on this surge that was satisfying 43 and probing through it, if you're, I don't know how seasoned of a trader you think you have to be confident that this isn't going to extend, as opposed to a novice trader who looks at this and thinks, I'm about to get really rich. But I'll call an audible and point out that's just not durable. I'll add some insights depending on the timing window. Some timing windows that will be. Today I was able to also add the insight that late in the day, getting parabolic, attacking prior highs where price has turned previously, probably going to do the same thing. So if we are long from one of my earlier signals, time to cover. Or time to exit in that case. So I'll share this with you and also the link. We're going to jump around a little. This is, I call it cheat sheets. And I'll show you why in a moment. But each one of these is a different topic. And if you hold your cursor over it, the definition of some of this jargon, the definitions of some of this jargon, their terms, will appear. Here's its link. I suggest that you open that page right now on your browser. So after we close the YouTube stream, you'll have that and you can look it over. I'll repost it tomorrow morning, but you might want to get used to it. But these are cheat sheets, just reference pages that go a little bit further into detail, or at least nice little references in what I'll be describing. And I'll be spending a little more time next 2 mornings in detail, explaining, not like you're a seasoned member that has been around here, but that you're new and you need to know. But what that refers to, those cheat sheets, are these over here, these sidebars basically. So here's one that actually isn't on that cheat sheet, but I'll leave it up. From time to time, it'll be available sporadically. It is a legend showing different features. Normally this is what you'll see. Both ES charts, front month, 3 minute on the left, 1 minute on the right. The signals are on the right, on the 1 minute. Bias parameters are on the left, on the 3 minute. I'll explain those in a moment. So, starting on the legend, the inflection point, buy signal, sell signal, but the inflection point is the signal. Now, that's not to say that's the trigger. That's not to say that's where you're necessarily going to buy or sell just because that level. And I hope this is self-explanatory. A line with an arrow is a buy signal or a sell signal. There's a buy signal, there's a sell signal. It's kind of arbitrary though, unless you have some rules surrounding it. So look on that cheat sheet and you'll see one of the sidebars is the 3x3 test. It may not make a lot of or a complete sense right now, but I'll be talking through it on every single setup as it arises. Every one of these little brief blue line, red line, green line, these are the same thing. They're all inflection points. They're coded differently, colored differently, because they have different utilities during the day. Again, overwhelming you now, I'll be talking through every little detail tomorrow. Now, fast markets might not allow me to dwell as much as I'd like to, but I'll come back, and if you ask questions, I'll definitely be addressing them. And if you have questions right now, please go ahead and post them. Any questions, comments, I can work them in. But each one of these inflection points is a buy or sell signal with some rules, and I go over tactics that you'll want to consider, strategies in how to use them for yourself based on your own risk tolerance, your own trading style, whether you're a one contract or multiple contract, multiple entry point, swinging, scalping. We go over different strategies through the day, time permitting. But again, the inflection point is the buy or sell. The red or green is reaction limit, pullback limit, bounce limit, depending on whether it's the same thing, red or green. In an uptrend, that's where, in my methodology, I identify where the usual attention span of weak-handed counter-trend sponsorship begins. Pretty neat, pretty useful, especially when we get trending, because a lot of people don't realize this. Something I've discovered is that the usual attention span of weak-handed counter-trend sponsorship is about 3 minutes, 3 or 4 minutes. And that can offer us great insight into where to place a stop, but also where to add into a position or onto a position. We had some interesting setups here. For instance, yesterday morning, there's a 3-minute low, usual attention span of weak-handed counter-trend sponsorship. Bought its retest, assuming that we're going to return to the origin of that dip. There's another one, a little too shallow to act on. There's one. Finally got minimum 3 ticks to start our 3-minute countdown. Buy that low. Return to the high. We'll go over the utility of that. You'll find it very interesting insight. The objective, if we have an actual objective, I'll be outlining it. And of course, RSI and MACD are below. The bias parameters are interesting. This is posted every day, twice a day. We have the PM and the AM bias parameters. This is after the fact. This afternoon, for instance, let's look at this morning. This morning's bias parameters. This is published after the close for the next morning. We already know for the bias strategy, we already know the levels and their objectives. They're derived from price action through the close. And the afternoon bias parameters are derived from price action within 3 minutes of the noon hour. So yesterday, we knew from patterns and setups in play that if the ES were above 53.43 at 10:15, that it would put into play 53.54. And if ES were under 53.26 at 10:15, it would put into play 53.13. It was neither, by the way, spoiler alert. This is those exact bias parameters. Those are the signals, the bias up and down signal, the bias up and down target beyond. Notice it didn't trigger. That's actually can be even more rewarding. It's more common when at 10:15 the bias triggers at 10:15 between the bias signals, between 53.43 and 53.26. The bias signals this morning, this is the afternoons. The bias signals this morning, by the time we got to 10:15, between both. How useful is that? You'd think not very, no bias. Actually, this is an interesting feature that happens a lot when one of the bias signals is tested between 9:30 and 10:15. Not overnight. Overnight doesn't play. Levels can be influential a lot when they're tested overnight. Again, these levels are published after the close, so they are available overnight if you're trading overnight. But as far as the requirement, just by virtue of post open at 9:30, between 9:30 and 10:15 having tested and not triggered bias down, that put into play an offsetting test of the bias up signal. It doesn't have to be tested immediately. It's often tested the same session. And in fact, whatever the path there, we're rarely going to be so spoiled as to have a direct path. That's an objective, and it's actually a requirement. Almost historically mandated to be tested. And if it weren't tested today, it would be left outstanding, and we'd anticipate its test at some future point. And that would definitely inform my analysis. So because at 10:15, because one of the bias signals was tested, holding a test of one signal targets the other signal, that's a reverse bias. Highly predictable. So you won't see that blog post, but you will see this 3-minute screen that has the levels, and I'll share them. You also won't see this blog post or any of the intraday blog posts unless you're a member and you have access to the blog or you get this emailed to you. But it's an analysis, the vidi system, we visualize, I identify the picture and any catalysts that are surrounding it. We identify any setups at the time. As of the close today, there aren't any. There's that big symmetrical or big ascending triangle, but that's a little too bigger picture for our purposes right now. And then the actionable parameters, basically, or the strategy, the premise. This is the closing wrap, but intraday there's a premise and there's an alternative. An alternative if the premise isn't playing out, with some extra levels and then a summary pick. Again, that's for that's a benefit to being a member, is you get that text and it is pushed to you so you can learn more. you remember, it's emailed to you automatically. The blog post, you don't ever have to hop onto the blog or note it. Check the blog. Same content, just emailed conveniently. So, in the morning, what I suggest is immersing yourself. If you can be here at 7, that's great. If you catch up by watching the video, it's pretty much the same experience, but you're unable to ask questions in live, real time. And again, if you have any questions about any of this right now, let me know. Tomorrow, especially, as things are developing, I always urge new members to, yes, Eastern Time, correct. I always urge new members to trade virtually. If you're a member, you actually, if you're a member, you have a coaching call, the opportunity to get on the phone with me, and we go through everything, anything. If you're having some stumbling block along your learning curve, and I do everything to move you along the learning curve quickly with a series of onboarding videos you get during the first week, in addition to workshops and coaching calls that you can get on the phone, ask me any questions, I'll walk you through any personalized tours. I can also examine your trading. I've worked with traders of all stages, helping to discover holes or figure out ways to learn new strategies, new tactics that are appropriate for your style. But again, I urge new members to virtual trade, because you might see a signal you might not know. I'm calling an audible in one instance. We may have, I'll identify an inflection point for the benefit of scalpers. And that inflection point, though, may be contrary to the window's likely ultimate resolution, and that signal, ultimately, that a scalper would be interested in might actually be an appropriate place to fade, to anticipate that its support in this case, that's what a sell signal is, it's support, and that's why its break is so productive, would nevertheless be a reasonable spot to get long. And there's no guesswork. We walk through the math on the risk to reward equation. Where would the stop candidates be? What's the reward we're looking for, so we can determine whether the risk reward ratio is within your own trading plan's requirements. Here's a signal. If your strategy is, I'm going to watch an inflection point be triggered, I'm going to monitor where the 3-minute extreme is for that 3x3 test. Start my countdown, and when that 3-minute low is probed, that's where my sell stop is going to be, or I'm going to try to pull the trigger manually myself. Always difficult. Well, this would have worked out really nicely. 3-minute test, the usual attention span of weak-handed counter-trend sponsorship. If that's overcome, it's by stronger hands. Really nice play that opened up. By the same token, here's a sell signal. 3-minute low. If you employ the same tactic, waiting for the 3-minute extreme to be identified and having a sell stop sitting below it to get short, well, you're a little underwater pretty quickly. So I go through what different tactics might make more sense or might be available, depending on the different environment, what the bias signal is. It doesn't all come together immediately. What I'm hoping that you'll get out of Wednesday and Thursday mornings is some actual insight while you're trading, if you're trading. Or if you want to trade virtually, just to literally come in and practice on my signals. But if I can enhance your own insight into the market while you're trading for a couple mornings, I'm very happy to do it, because I appreciate your taking time to be exposed to my methodology. But I do urge that if you're going to trade specifically and exclusively on my signals for the first time, for the first week, do so in a virtual environment. And when we do a coaching call and I teach you, for instance, some exercises to work out your muscle memory in some tactics, in some quick reversal tactics, re-entry tactics. You really can't do it when you've got money sitting out there. It uses up part of your brain that we need devoted to building that muscle. So get used to using a virtual environment. One of the best investments of time that you can make. But with my guidance, I think a little bit more profitable. So, I think that's it. Again, any questions, please go ahead and ask. So again, that is Eastern Time at 7. And if you can join us, if you jump in later, the link will be in this chat. Look, and it'll be labeled. And look at the chat now, and you can see the market wrap recording from today. You won't be around for the market wrap recording in real time tomorrow unless you go ahead and join in the interim. But I'll leave you the link tomorrow afternoon as well. Or at least when you join Thursday morning, it'll be there if you want to catch it early and get up to speed. But I do urge being here in real time at 9:15. It's literally a 3-minute call, but I identify any actionable levels, especially pointing out if they are immediately actionable, and what we're looking for and why, and how to recognize when it's not working. One other point to make that you should be aware of is this is not a quote service. This is a signal service. I specifically designed and created my signals that they're not dependent on up to the second quotes. Maybe up to the minute, but not up to the second. So I think you can use this simulcast effectively even though there's latency, meaning that since you're not logged in to the platform that subscribers or members are logged into, where they're getting real time, they're seeing the chart in real time, they're seeing the setups labeled in real time, they're hearing me in real time, you're going to notice that there's some kind of latency tomorrow. It can be quite a few seconds. So just to be aware of that. And by the way, when you do join us for the strategy planner, like the market wrap that you're going to be watching, the link that I left, you'll see that we go through multiple markets, we go through currencies, any setups that I've got working and why, any paths that I've traced out, whether they're being adhered to or not, what targets are outstanding. So that was currencies, metals, long bond, crude oil, of course, crypto. In addition to Bitcoin right now, we're pretty closely involved in Ethereum, Near, Algorand, Solana, with specific setups in each. Also, individual equities. We've got NVIDIA earnings after tomorrow's close. You won't be available for that unless you subscribe, or you'll be around the next morning to see what happens. We have specific outlook on NVIDIA. Subscribers, real-time subscribers, are welcome to ask for analysis, instant analysis. During the day, give me a name. Give me what are you looking for? Looking for a place to enter long. I'm trying to look for a place to sell. What's a good stop? Where's a target? And I pull up the chart and get that done pretty quickly. So if you're trading individual equities, we can also be of assistance there. So that is it. Thanks everyone very much for taking the time to prep for tomorrow and Thursday's special simulcast. If I don't see it at 7, you'll see the link to the 7 o'clock strategy planner recording, which again I urge you to watch. So just like this prep session, you're able to hit the ground running, move along the learning curve that much faster, and be able to absorb what could be a very fast-moving environment. If not tomorrow morning, probably Thursday, kind of the last bit of excitement we're going to see before the weekend, the holiday weekend. Okay, post any questions after the fact too, and I'll get to them. Or if you are watching this video later and more questions or any questions come up, even if we're not doing anything, even if I'm not speaking or presenting, just throw them in the chat. I'll see them, and I will speak, but also try to type the answer. So if you're not around, you can come back and scroll it. All right, everyone, have a great night, and I'll see you in the morning. Take care.